I've actually been researching my dad's history. He was way more successful than I was. My success rate is pitiful compared to his. Yeah, he was in two bands, the Stargazers and the Polka Dots, and sang with Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald,
Wow.
Petula Clark, Joe Stafford, and actually sang on a couple of Beatles records. So he had quite a history and a huge influence on me. It was a big part of my inspiration for becoming a musician. But the other thing is, I think that any young person growing up in Britain at the time, so this would be late 60s into the 70s, looked at the Beatles, looked at the Who, looked at the Kinks, looked at the Stones, Moody Blues, whoever, and realised that I could do that. I could be part of that, and I could reach the world by doing that, because that was really what the Beatles showed us all could be done through music. So it was that in combination with my father's experience that made me want to get into it.
Everybody knows about the success of Johnny Hates Jazz and the hit records and so on. But for quite a long time, you and Mike went your separate ways, and you didn't really have much communication between you before you came back together, I think, in 2009, did you?
That's right. Yeah, we didn't speak for 22 years.
Wow.
And at first, that was very much the case of any band breakup. It tends to be painful at best, acrimonious at worst. But actually, Mike and I had known each other for many years before Johnny Hates Jazz was formed. So it turned into more of just a parting of the ways, in the sense that we both got on with our own lives. And it wasn't until I wrote a song called Magnetize that I realized actually this maybe could be a Johnny Hates Jazz record, and I should contact Mike again and see what he felt about it.
And where did the name come from, by the way? I don't think I've ever heard the story behind the name Johnny Hates Jazz. Whose idea was that?
It was Mike's idea, actually. His brother-in-law is Johnny. Johnny is a real person who has a hemp stall on Cambridge Market. And one day there was a family gathering, and someone was playing a Dave Brubeck record, Take Five, I think it was. And Johnny got out of his chair, he ripped off the vinyl record from the record player and smashed it in two over his knee. And someone in the room exclaimed, "Oh, my goodness, Johnny Hates Jazz." And for some bizarre reason, that phrase lodged in Mike's memory, so that when we came to deciding on a band name and he came up with that, we just laughed. We thought it was a fun name and a bit of a reactionary name as well, so we quite liked it.
How would you define the style of music then? And is the style of Johnny Hates Jazz today very similar or very different to the Johnny Hates Jazz of all those years ago?
Well, I think it's really for the listener to decide if it's very different. From my perspective, it is. But back then, we were young people of our time, so we were very in tune with what was going on. And typical of the 80s and 70s, we were very, very eclectic. I mean, to us, listening to Steely Dan was no different than listening to Duran Duran. It was all an amazingly colourful period of music.
Yeah.
So I think all of those things went into the mix of what we did back then.
Obviously, that was a defining moment, really, wasn't it, in 2013? The cancer diagnosis and everything. Did it change your philosophy on life and music, for that matter?
I think it can't not do. I think anyone who goes through a close call with death would say that about their own lives and their own work. I think for me, what it did was it reaffirmed and deepened a perspective I already had regarding music. And this goes back to the idea of allowing some influence from the music we grew up listening to on the new album. And that's the fact that we grew up listening to songs that often were very socially conscious, but also had incredibly wonderful melodies, were huge hits at the same time. And that was never odd. I think that's become a bit of an oddity these days. But the charts was full of those kind of things, whether it was, John Lennon or Stevie Wonder or Marvin Gaye or the Isleys, whoever it was. And I think that it's always been something that I wanted to imbue in some of the songs that we did together. I Don't Want to Be a Hero, our second hit back in the 80s, was a good example of that. And I think that health experience made me realise that there's no time to waste, that we've got to include some of those songs with what we do, because we face such monumental challenges societally, and music should always be a part of hopefully finding a solution.
Hey, thanks again for listening to this interview. If you enjoyed it, please click on the like button. Make sure you ring that notification bell. Check out all of the other interviews here. And if you can, please help the channel by subscribing. Thank you.